good shape. So, what I would like to do before we get into your life of writing and public speaking and all the work that you do, first and
Mhm.
foremost, the last 4 years ago, we were dealing with this pandemic, trying to figure out how long it was going to last, the
Yeah.
ramifications. How did you make it through that time period, and how did it affect the way that you do things now?
Yeah, it's an interesting question. So first, let me say that I'm not sure I handled it well psychologically
Right.
at first, and I'll tell you why. I was in my office in San Francisco coaching someone who was hiring me. This person is I'm not going to say who it is, but this person is a journalist. They had just written a book and they wanted to do the voiceover of the book, the audio recordings. They had hired me. This person came into my office just looking devastated. And I said, "What's wrong?" And he said, "We're going to go into shelter in place. COVID's hitting us." And I was one of the people who knew. I mean, I was watching the news, I was reading, I was hearing things about Italy and China and everything else, but I didn't realize how much it was going to hit the United States. And I said, "Are you sure?" And he goes, "Yes, I am absolutely sure." So what did I do? I called one of my former clients who was the president of the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation and asked him what's going to happen. And he said, "We're going to be in shelter in place for a year to a year and a half. Here's what you need to do." And so I'm not saying there was one perfect way to do this, but I got information overload too fast.
Yeah.
So psychologically, I was freaking out,
Of
whereas
course.
a lot of other people, and I know that different states handled it differently, but here in California, it was impulses. So we're going to go into shelter in place for 2 weeks, well, maybe just a few more weeks, and just trying to calm everybody and trying not to get people to freak out. But I went straight into freak out mode because I had that information, right? So, I mean, at least I wasn't in denial, but how did I cope with it? Like many people, I had a little bit of a down. There were so many questions. I coach public speakers and executive communication skills and things that relate to how we interact in the world, right? And so a big portion of that, I was beginning to wonder, is it even going to exist? Will we have conferences anymore? And this kind of thing. But in terms of my career and coaching, which is what makes me happy, I pivoted right away to online coaching. How do you use Zoom? How do you get the best out of your online presence and on-camera presence, right? Because that's what people needed. And so I found some solace in that in terms of how I dealt with it. I also had a 6-month-old wolf dog at the time.
Yeah.
So I had my companionship,
Yeah.
which is how it's important, right? We have to
Yeah.
keep
Of
our mental health up.
course.
Yeah.
Interesting.
How about
I
you?
remember the first time I heard about it. My day job is as an IT technician for a large school district, and I had a
Mm,
good friend of mine from years before that said in January we got a letter from the district bracing us
mhm.
for like staying home, and my brain went into such shock. I just dismissed it as though it didn't happen. Like
Yeah.
I was just like, okay, that thought can go right in the trash. I'm out. I'm not even going to do it.
Yeah.
And but then right around the same time or right before then, I remember seeing a picture of Beijing and no one was on the street. I was like, hold on a second. And then it was just like a New York Times picture or something like that. I was like, there's no way that that's not going to make it like around the globe at some point. Like China's
Right.
the most congested. Like they were talking about the smog clearing up. So anyway, all of it was a very strange time, and that's another rabbit hole. But I really want to focus on getting
No.
into how your work and how you evolved to this point. And to begin that process, I'm going to put you
Mhm.
in front of a bunch of third grade students at career day, and one of the kids is curious and says, "Hey, what do you do for a living?" How do you answer that
Mhm.
child?
I help people communicate better verbally and non-verbally. And that can be challenging for people who sometimes don't feel like they want to be the center of attention, or they just need to be polishing their skills so that whatever work they do can be seen and heard and understood in a way that is seamless. That's probably how I would say it to a third grader.
You know what's interesting looking at Bob Dylan, and I'm a big Dylan fan, is that he didn't really want that position. I mean, he
No.
took, he took ownership of it, but he didn't want to be that. And it's funny explaining how you get people that have to be the center of attention but don't. And Bob was kind of emblematic of that. He just didn't want to be the voice of a generation. He was just a
No.
guy with another name, Robert Zimmerman from Minneapolis, that just wanted to make music.
Yeah, yeah, it's true. I've read something recently where and I believe this, in terms of his writing in the 60s, he said, I wasn't writing songs, they were just pouring out of me.
Yeah.
Paraphrasing.
Right. Right.
No, don't quote me.
Yeah.
Uh, and I can see that because on a creative level, I was an actress for 10 years. And there's a certain zone that you get into, um, that it does feel that way.
Hmm.
Yes, there's a craft to it, absolutely 100% for sure. But there's a pulse that just sort of is moving through you when the
Yeah.
timing is right and you're in the space to be doing it. And that's when you do your best work. And, so it makes sense that he would say something similar,
Yeah.
that he's absorbing all of the chaos of the 1960s, what's going on. And then it's just coming through him,
Yeah.
and
It's
he's shaping
channeling.
it,
Yeah.
shaping it.
And you
Yeah.
sense that in the music. You sense that he was
Yeah.
a font of all of those things that were getting filtered out, that was
Yeah.
mobilizing people. So, what did you want to be in the third grade? What was your dream to grow up and become?
I wanted to be an actor.
Okay. All right.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, talk to me a little bit about how you got out of acting, how that all began. What were the seeds early on? Where were you born and raised? And what were these
Mhm.
seeds of performance ultimately that turned into who you are today?
Yeah, thanks for asking. I'm from a small college town in Northern California, Davis, California, and I grew up in a very large, chaotic family. I wrote a book in 2019, which is a professional book called Grace Under Pressure, a masterclass in public speaking. And I did finally include something personal because the publisher wanted me to say something personal about my journey. So I included in there that I grew up in a very, surrounded by a lot of trauma. My parents were both mentally ill and not good people. And so there was chaos and a lot of trauma and a lot of, uh, I don't know, what do you want to call it, discomfort. And as a kid, I spent a lot of time alone. I was very introverted. So I had the imagination always going. I was always writing and drawing and doing things that, creative outlet, basically. And there was something about the idea of being an actor that appealed to me. And what's interesting about it is once I grew up, when I actually went to my undergrad for psychology because I talked myself out of it. I had a life-changing experience. And then I said, no, I really am going to move to San Francisco, take some vocational training and see what I can do on stage. Right. And so that's how that came to be. And what I still love about it and miss on some levels is I love great writing. I
Yeah.
love great playwrights. And, great writing, there's two behind me, they're musicians, but still great writers, right? And sometimes the business of acting, I don't love. I did not love it at all.
Oh, yeah.
I don't, and auditioning is hard and all that. So the business of it, I didn't love. And I was never great at networking and things like this. I'm also not, unfortunately, back then, everyone really did have to fit into a particular type. So I'm not the beautiful leading lady on film. I could be on stage sometimes, but not on film, not the girl next door. There's a limit. So then you don't get the great parts when you're not the beautiful leading lady and you can't pick and choose, right? So anyways, so the love of acting faded really quickly one day. I decided I wanted to become an Alexander technique teacher, which is a technique that's taught in drama conservatories, music conservatories, helps shape actors. It also works in pain clinics and whatnot. And I was up for a part that I was really right for. I was up for Rosalind in As You Like It. And halfway through the audition, I just stopped and I looked at the director and I said, thank you. I don't want to do this anymore. And he said, what? I said, thank you. I don't want to do this anymore. And that was it. And I walked off the stage and I left and I never went
Wow.
back because I'd already started teaching. And I think that the need that I had, that I wanted fulfilled during the 10 years I was an actress, had been fulfilled.
Yeah.
That whatever it was for me that I needed to do creatively and the esteem building and my connection to audiences and my connection to other actors, directors in the creative process, that need was fulfilled and I didn't need to do it anymore.
Yeah.
And once I started teaching, I really, really loved it.
Yeah.
And so the rest is history.
Wow.
I'm
So
not sure I really explained the parents part, but I think that I think a
no,
lot of people who grow up in chaotic environments, they either go one of two ways. They either go towards lacking empathy or they go towards really having a lot of empathy.
yeah.
And I went this way.
Right.
That means sharing and helping and healing.
Yeah. No, I agree. And I think that, yeah, I think when we do deal with trauma, there's definitely very, very
Yeah.
defined ways that we live our lives, because you have to spend the rest of your life healing. You never quite ever get over it. And I think there's a part of us too that has to protect that inner child, that young version of us that's hiding within us all the time. And we always have to protect that version of us one way or
Mhm.
another. Um, I'm curious, as a music fan, what was the first concert you saw that blew you away?
That blew me away.
Yeah.
So that's a big question, right? Because that blew me away.
That was seminal, like, just that one when you were a kid or younger that was like, wow, I saw the pinnacle of music.
I don't know if I can, I don't think I have a great answer for you, to be honest with you, but I will tell you the one that stands out to me is Beck. It might be surprising,
Yeah,
but the
Beck's
first
great.
time I saw Beck on stage, I couldn't believe it. I just couldn't believe it. I could not believe, I mean, I could believe it, but how talented and how skilled he was. And I remember watching him switch guitars and play different instruments and play different instruments. And I kept thinking, this is what you get when you start as a child, as a protege, and you work all the time at something. This is, you know what I mean? Because yes, there are some
Uh-huh.
people that have certain natural talents, right? But it's really about deciding and committing to learning a craft or learning these instruments, in his
Yep.
case, I guess, and then doing it for so long, and you become such a master of it. And starting very young, you know, because
Yep.
his dad was a musician, from what I understand. And so he started very young, and I was really blown away by that.
Yeah,
Mm.
it's that idea of Malcolm Gladwell, 10,000 hours, you become a master of something, you know? But I remember the first album I really got and was impressed with was Mutations. And there was a he wrote in there that his grandfather was a visual artist and he used to go to shows. So he's been immersed in art his entire life. But yeah,
Yeah.
he's amazing. Like, and the great thing about Beck is that he remains profound when he gets raw. Like, he had the breakup album, which was the one with the hat, I think Sea Change, I think it was.
Yeah.
It
Yeah.
was real low key for him. There was not a lot of like things going on.
Yeah.
But yeah, he's amazing. One of my favorite musicians of all time, who transcends like many people out there, is a guy by the name of Jason Faulkner. He's out of LA and he tours with Beck. That's his
Mm.
first call guitarist that he has on tour with him. So
Mm.
yeah, I love that Beck orbit. And I love the way that he tackled Kanye when he came up to him and tried to take his
Oh,
award.
I
And
don't remember that.
oh yeah, he
I don't
ran up
remember.
on stage and did that whole pouty Kanye thing, and he was just like, "No, come on, dude, come on up, let's talk." He would like invited him up instead of acting
Yeah.
shocked, but that's Beck's way. So
Yeah.
I'm curious,
Mm.
who's been a hero for you in your life? You've obviously needed heroes probably for
Mhm.
certain periods of your life, but who's been kind of your overall inspiration or hero for the work that you've done in your life?
Do you mean famous people, people I don't know, or somebody actually in my life?
Just anybody that's been influential.
Yeah, there's some famous people I look up to. I look up to Bianca Jagger. No one
Yeah,
ever expects me to say that, but I really
right.
do. She's so strong, and I really think that, you know, for those who are listening, watching, and don't know the story, being a model and being beautiful and married to a huge musician, a famous musician like Mick Jagger, stopping because you see on a shoot, she saw these, I guess they were Contras or guerrillas or something, right? Armed militia, taking some prisoners of war, and she interrupted them and made them release the prisoners of war.
Wow.
And she did it by saying, "You're going to have to kill me and these American photographers and press," because people were there shooting her, right? And the story goes that they were like, "Wait, what did she just say? What?" But she did it. She talked them into the release. And then she had a moment where she said to herself, you know, an epiphany: what am I doing with my life? I'm letting people take pictures of me because I'm beautiful. This is absolute BS. And then she left that life and went into being the spokesperson for Amnesty International and doing a
Hmm.
lot of work
Yeah.
towards the betterment of man, right?
Yeah.
And so that's inspiring. Jane Goodall's a very inspiring person, especially when it comes to authenticity.
Hmm.
When people ask me or say things like, "Well, I don't have a really big presence. I don't have a really big voice." I say, look at Jane Goodall.
Yeah.
right? She's petite, she's soft-spoken, but she's the biggest voice in the room
Yeah.
because she has gravitas, she believes in what she's saying, and belief in herself and the work she does and so on, you know?
Yeah.
So yes, depending on the mood or where I am or what I'm doing, I could probably come up with another couple people, just like everybody can, right?
Yeah.
And then some of the people in my life that I think are heroes are the people who've gone through a lot of challenges and kept very positive attitudes
Hmm.
and treat people really well.
Yeah.
Those
Yeah.
are the people that I look up to in my personal life.
So if you could meet one person alive on the planet right now that you find fascinating, who would it be? Who would you love to meet and talk to?
Um, Steve Schmidt.
Okay.
I didn't even have to think about that. Steve
Yeah.
Schmidt. Yeah.
Yeah. What would you ask? What would you want to know?
Um, I would ask, I know this isn't a political show. I would beg him to take over the Biden campaign and fix everything
Yeah.
because he could.
Yeah. Somebody needs to.
Yeah, I mean,
Somebody needs to.
he's his most successful Republican strategist in the country. He
Yeah.
knows how to do it.
Yeah. Yeah.
Why are they hiring him? I don't know, but it's frightening.
It is.
And that's the one person I would meet.
Yeah.
That's what
That,
we would talk about. You'd see some
yeah.
heavy pleading and begging on my part.
Wow. Yeah. So let me ask you this. What is your motivator every day to
Mm.
do the work that you do, to wake up and to do the work that
Oh,
you do?
easy. This is an easy one. Yeah. Watching someone walk out of my office with a huge smile and a weight lifted and a huge amount of confidence that they did not walk in the door with, which is pretty commonplace for me. I feel very lucky that I am able to do that. That's what keeps me going. Yeah,
What's
to do the
what
work.
Yeah. Well, what's one of your
Mhm.
favorite client success stories?
Um, there's so many. The one I had last year was really great. She's a scientist doctor who studies the brain, and she has 250 peer-reviewed articles. I think the average is 50. Very smart, but has never written a speech before. So she found me and said, I'm going to be doing a talk at an event that a friend of mine is curating, or a friendly person is curating. And she was speaking after the CEO of YouTube and before Roy Khanna, who's is he the Peninsula? He's near the Peninsula. He's a member of the House of Representatives and a great speaker, right? So she was really nervous. She'd never done anything like this, but it was to bring awareness to her lab so she could eventually raise money. So this is happening in Silicon Valley last year, and she was nervous about it. And the reason that I loved it is because when I work with someone like this, they're bringing in so much that I can work with,
Yeah.
right? It's not like I have to invent something. She's already got a ton of information. And I could give her the key ingredients that she needed that she wouldn't know. So for instance, that type of a writer will write like they write articles,
Yeah.
right? Which you're studying the brain for depression. You got to be kidding me. No one wants to stand on, we don't want to hear that, right? And it was an upbeat event too. So I rewrote it for her with her permission. I rewrote the speech for her. So that was fulfilling for me. And she knocked it out of the park. So I taught her how to breathe, how to articulate, how to use her voice in a resonant way, how to move, how to look at the audience, where to look at the audience and when. And so there's the performative qualities of it, and then how to really, really, really own the language she was using. Because again, a lot of people who are in the behind the scenes
Yeah.
writing, or just behind the scenes in general, whatever industry you're in, you're not used to that
Yeah.
being so forward. And the mind does a lot of tricky things on people.
Hmm.
I experience it sometimes. You probably have at some point, everyone, where suddenly you're not in your comfort zone and you're speaking next to someone who's really in their comfort zone, who's going to come on right before you and right after you.
Yeah.
It's scary, right? So then your mind starts to do the tricks of, oh my gosh, I'm not good enough. The audience is going to be bored with me, and blah, 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 blah. So we have to change the mindset part. We have to do the physical training. We have to do the delivery technique training. And I got to rewrite her speech, which, by the way, if I don't say myself, it was very good. So that's a good example. Then the other thing, and I think this is a through line with the conversation, is that I like to work with people who are doing good things in the world.
Yeah.
And what she ended up telling me in our last conversation, because I don't pry too much into people's work outside of the work we're doing, because it's their business. But what I did start to hint about wondering what's making people pick up guns and going into schools or churches or malls. You know what I mean?
Hmm.
And she said, well, yeah, why do you think I'm doing this? And then I realized, oh, she's not just studying the brain, she's studying the brain from 15 to 25.
Yeah.
And that's what she's looking for.
Yeah.
Is there anything that we can see that's causing this? Is there any commonality? So anyways, that was
Yeah.
one of my favorite
Yeah.
clients at late.
That's a great story. So I'm curious, what's the best speech you've ever seen? Best one you ever witnessed?
In person
Yeah.
or just on the,
In person.
yeah, in person. Oh, it sounds so obvious, but it's Bill Clinton, or at
Mine
least the
too.
best speaker,
Mine
best speaker.
too. Yeah.
Yeah.
I was blown away to this day. He came to the Truman Library here in Kansas City. And when
Mhm.
that door opened up, he had some handlers, and
Uh-huh.
it was like pixie dust was thrown into the room. Like
Yeah.
there was like a gush, and the whole crowd went crazy. I still remember what he talked about. He was talking about solar panels on high rises in New York City, conserving energy. There was all these brilliant ideas, and I was like, I was blown away.
Yeah. Yeah. He's very comfortable, as you
Hmm.
would be at a certain point in the career. He worked really hard at it. Even, you know, these stories, even at the White House, he was having, you know, his wife and his daughter debate him all the time for practice, you know,
Yeah,
when he could, when he had time.
yeah,
But, you know, not afraid to keep working on it, not afraid to keep honing his skills, and really enjoyed it. One of the key ingredients for him, I think, is not everybody's going to enjoy it and not all the time,
yeah.
but he really loves communicating with people. He loves being at the podium. He loves being in front of the cameras, right?
Hmm.
And that can make all the difference in the world. And that thing I said before about how the mind can play tricks on you, you know, give you weird false beliefs, you know, or ones that you've already adopted and seemingly can't get rid of. He doesn't have a lot of that.
Yeah,
You know, he's there to do the work, he's there to do the job, and self-doubt is somebody else's problem, you know.
yeah,
Yeah. And that makes for a very present speaker, very present
absolutely.
communicator.
So, of
Yeah.
all of these things that you've done and accomplished and evolved into, what are you the proudest of?
Career wise,
I think the Venn diagram kind of bleeds into itself, just kind of overall.
what am I most proud of? Probably that my story somehow is a little inspiring to other people,
Yeah,
because I did come from a very rough background. I left home at 13. I took my parents to court to get protective custody away from them. I was homeless for a little while and doing it. And people find that inspiring, that, you know, I was able to pull myself up by my bootstraps, as they say. But I think honestly, what I said about my clients, the people I've worked with, being able to really help them in a very significant and profound way
yeah.
is what I'm proud of.
So let's say you have a dream tonight. You run into the 18-year-old version of you, and you could give that young version of you a piece of advice based on the life you've lived, the wisdom you've gained. What advice would you give that young version, and would that version of you listen?
Oh yeah. The second part, 100%. I
Okay.
listen. I'm a good listener. I'm willing to take advice and feedback. I would say don't waste your time in romantic relationships with people who don't deserve you.
There you go. So before we get to the kind of the therapy question, I want to know
Yeah.
if you could get into a time machine and go back in time and see one concert, where are you going?
Oh my gosh. You know, it's funny. I have nine older brothers and sisters, and so it's going to be Earth, Wind, and Fire in the
Yeah.
70s, because they all said they snuck in, and they said of all the concerts we snuck into, that Earth, Wind, and Fire blew them away.
Wow.
So that would be it, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
everyone has a perception of you. Yeah. So everyone has a perception of you, family, friends, clients, colleagues, but you run the show. What's your perception of you? Who do you think you are?
Who do you think
Who
you
do you
are?
think you are?
I think I'm a very empathic, intelligent, independent woman who um, is always trying to do better.
Yeah. So, final question, you can get into a time machine and go back in human history and see one event with your own eyes. Where are you going to go?
One, just one.
Well, we could you could do a little trolley hop like Back to the Future if you want.
Okay, one event in human history, where would I go? And the fantasy is that I would be able to speak the same language of the people there.
Of course. Or you could
Okay,
just
yeah, it would be Jesus's crucifixion.
okay. All right. Yeah. That would be heavy. That would
Yeah,
be
that would
that,
be yeah. But see, that's the person I am. I think I would be thinking, how can we stop this?
right.
This is going to have so much impact on the world.
Right.
How do we, yeah.
That would be an interesting storyline for a script if that did get stopped. What would have happened? Like,
Yeah.
how, you know, so I mean, there wouldn't
Yeah.
be Easter. There would be certainly things that would happen immediately that would be a part of that. So if anyone out there wants to hire you, learn more about what you're doing, reach out, any of the good business, where do they go?
LisaWentz.com,
Okay.
LisaWentz.com.
Okay. Lisa, this has been wonderful. We finally did it. We had a few chances. I think this was the third time, and they always
Yeah.
say that's the charm, so it's good.
Yeah. Great to meet you.
Great to meet you. Best of luck with everything.
All right, you too.
Take care.
Bye-bye.
See ya.